I never thought I'd be the guy posting here. But after everything that went down, I need to get this out. This is the story of how I found out the woman I was going to marry never really loved me, just the life I could give her, and how in the end, she played herself. My dad built something huge, a real estate empire, from the ground up. It took decades of sweat, sleepless nights, and ruthless business decisions. He wasn't cold, but he was sharp, always 10 steps ahead of everyone else. He made damn sure my brother Ryan and I didn't grow up as just rich kids. Summers on construction sites, late nights reviewing contracts, sitting silently in meetings, watching how he worked a room. We earned our place in the business, and by my late 20s, I had built a solid career alongside Ryan. Which is why, when I met Sabrina, I never thought twice about money. She was different, or at least, I thought she was. Confident, charismatic, the kind of woman who could walk into a room and own it without even trying. She had this effortless charm that made you want to impress her. And man, I did. I liked making her happy. I liked seeing her eyes light up when I surprised her with things. Designer bags? Sure. Weekend getaways? Done. Private dinners at the best restaurants in Chicago? Didn't even blink. She wasn't just grateful. She made me feel like I was the best thing that had ever happened to her. When I proposed, she cried. Full on, trembling hands, voice shaking sobs. She told me she couldn't believe how lucky she was. I thought I'd won the jackpot. And then, my dad died. Losing him wasn't just personal. It was like the ground shifted beneath me. He wasn't just my father. He was my mentor, my guide through life. And suddenly, he was gone. There wasn't even time to grieve properly. Ryan and I had to step up, fast. The business couldn't just pause because we were mourning. At first, Sabrina seemed to understand. She gave me space, didn't push, let me process things in my own way. But then, something changed. Not overnight. Not in some big, dramatic way. It was subtle. Her questions shifted. At first, it was normal. How are you holding up? Are you and Ryan managing okay? Then, it became strategic. So, when do you officially take over? Who has final say, you or Ryan? Are you in full control of the board? I brushed it off at first. She was just curious, right? She wanted to understand my life. But she never asked how I was feeling, only about where I stood. And then, she started bringing up Ryan. A lot. Ryan's so business savvy. You two must make a great team. Ryan has such a strong presence. Do you ever feel like he overshadows you? Ryan must be under so much stress right now. I should check in on him. The first few times, I didn't think much of it. But then she started suggesting things. We should have a dinner with the board. It's important that I get to know them. I'd love to sit in on one of your meetings, just to understand things better. Sabrina had never cared about the business before. She loved the perks, the lifestyle. But suddenly, she wanted to be involved. Like she wasn't just my fiancée anymore. She was positioning herself. One night, we were sitting on the couch, and she hit me with a question that stopped me cold. So, if something happened and you weren't running the company, what would you do? It wasn't what she asked. It was how she said it. Like she was testing something. That's when it clicked. Sabrina didn't love me. She loved the security I represented, the status, the power. And she was making sure that if I wasn't the golden ticket she thought I was, she had a backup plan. That's when I decided to test her. I waited a few days, made sure everything seemed normal. Then, one night after dinner, I leaned back in my chair and sighed. I've been thinking a lot. Now that Dad's gone, the board is restructuring everything. It's been complicated. She looked up from her phone, instantly alert. Restructuring? Yeah. I hesitated just enough to make it seem real. Ryan's taking on a bigger role than expected. Some things are shifting. She set her phone down, her fingers tightening around the glass in her hand. What do you mean shifting? Well, I let out another sigh. There's something I found out about Dad's will that I wasn't expecting. I hesitated, then dropped the bomb. I'm not his biological son. Sabrina froze. What? Yeah. I ran a hand through my hair. He adopted me when I was a baby, but legally, I'm not his heir. The company, the majority of it, is going to Ryan. Silence. I watched her process. The way her lips parted slightly. The way her fingers twitched against her glass. Then, she forced a smile. Well, as long as you're okay with it, right? That's what matters. I nodded, pretending not to notice the way her posture stiffened. For the next few days, I paid attention. She started texting Ryan more, complimenting him, asking subtle questions. Fishing. Ryan, you're so good at taking charge. I admire how decisive you are. You have such a natural confidence. It's inspiring. Then, she started showing up places she didn't need to be, dressing up for casual meetings, laughing a little too hard at his jokes. Ryan saw it too. She's testing the waters, he said one night, shaking his head. Seeing if she can trade up? My jaw clenched. Let's see how far she takes it. So we set the trap. Ryan invited her over to his apartment, telling her he wanted to discuss business. Alone. Of course, I was already there, hidden in the next room, phone in hand, recording everything. And that's when Sabrina made her final move. She leaned in close to Ryan, her fingers brushing against his wrist, her voice dropping into something low and intimate. I think we'd make an amazing team. Ryan played along. What about Ethan? Her smile didn't even falter. Ethan's sweet, but let's be real. He doesn't have your drive. He's comfortable where he is. But you're ambitious. You have a vision. I gripped my phone so tightly my knuckles went white. She had no idea she just sealed her own fate. I sat there in the next room, gripping my phone so hard my fingers ached. Sabrina's voice drifted through the air. Smooth, practiced, calculated. Ethan is sweet, but let's be real. He doesn't have your drive. He's comfortable where he is. But you're ambitious. You have a vision. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Not anger. Not shock. Just finality. I had given her the benefit of the doubt. I had wanted to be wrong. But this was her saying it, clear as day. She wasn't with me because she loved me. She was with me because she thought I was the safest bet. And now that she thought I wasn't, she was ready to switch teams. Ryan played it cool. He leaned back, stretching his arms like he was considering what she was saying. So what are you saying, Sabrina? She smiled, soft, almost shy. I knew that look. I'd seen it before when she wanted something. I think we'd make an amazing team, she murmured. With your leadership and my support, there's no limit to what we could accomplish. She placed a hand on his arm, tilting her head just enough to make it suggestive without being obvious. Ryan nodded slowly. And Ethan? There was a flicker of hesitation. Then, she sighed, like this was hard for her, like she was making some great sacrifice. I care about him. I really do. But sometimes you have to accept that not everyone is meant to be in control. And just like that, I was done. Ryan must have sensed it because his voice shifted. You know, Sabrina, you're right. I think honesty is important too. Then, loud, casual. What do you think, Ethan? For a second, she didn't react. Then she froze. Her whole body went stiff as her brain caught up. I stepped out of the next room, phone still in hand. She turned slowly, like she was hoping, praying, that this was all some misunderstanding. Ethan, she breathed, her voice suddenly shaking. I lifted my phone and tapped play, and the room filled with her voice. Ethan is sweet, but let's be real. He doesn't have your drive. With your leadership and my support, there's no limit to what we could accomplish. The color drained from her face. She lunged forward, reaching for my phone, but I pulled it back before she could touch it. Ethan, please. You played yourself, I said flatly. You thought you were so fucking smart. So careful. But you're sloppy, Sabrina. You got greedy. I know. That's not what this is. Her head whipped toward Ryan, desperate now. Ryan, you know what I meant. I wasn't saying I wanted to be with you. I was trying to make sure the company was stable. For Ethan, I swear. Ryan just raised an eyebrow. Oh, so when you said you wanted to be with someone going places, you meant Ethan? Her mouth opened, then closed. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. I let out a bitter laugh. You really think you can talk your way out of this? She turned back to me, eyes glassy with panic. I love you, Ethan. I was scared. You told me you lost your position in the company. I didn't know what was going to happen to us. Her voice cracked, and she took a step closer, reaching for me like if she could just touch me, she could somehow undo everything. I stepped back, and that's when she really started to panic. Tears welled up in her eyes. She was good at crying. I'd seen her do it before, and every other time, I'd fallen for it. Not this time. I was trying to look out for our future, she whispered, her voice trembling. Ethan, please. I made a mistake, but it doesn't mean I don't love you. I do. I exhaled slowly, dragging a hand down my face. You know what the worst part is? My voice was quiet now. I actually fucking believed you. I thought you were different. I wanted to marry you, build a life with you. A single tear slipped down her cheek. And we still can? No. Her whole body flinched. I stared at her for another long moment, then turned to Ryan. I think we're done here. Ryan nodded. Yeah, I think so too. Sabrina let out a soft, choked sound. Ethan, please. I walked past her without another word, and I didn't look back. She showed up at my apartment later that night. I could hear her through the door, knocking frantically, her voice breaking as she pleaded for me to just talk to her. I didn't answer. The next morning, I woke up to texts. Sabrina. Ethan, please, you don't understand. I was just scared. Sabrina. I love you. I love us. Don't let this ruin everything. Sabrina. You're my world. Please don't shut me out. I didn't respond. A few hours later, her tone changed. Sabrina. So that's it? You're just throwing me away like I'm nothing? Sabrina. I stood by you through everything, and you're treating me like garbage. Sabrina. You'll regret this. You think you'll ever find someone better than me? You won't. Blocked. I thought that was the end of it, but a week later, she sent me one last message. A single sentence that made my blood run cold. Sabrina. I'm pregnant, Ethan. I stared at my phone, rereading the message so many times the words started to blur. I'm pregnant, Ethan. For a long moment, I just sat there, my brain refusing to process it. Not because I was scared, not because I wasn't ready to be a father, but because it was bullshit. Sabrina had played every other card she had, and when none of them worked, she pulled out the nuclear option. I exhaled through my nose and forwarded the message to Ryan. A minute later, my phone rang. You've got to be fucking kidding me, Ryan said, his voice half amused, half pissed. Wish I was. There was a beat of silence. Then he let out a low whistle. So, what's the plan? You gonna call her out? I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my temple. Not yet. Ryan snorted. Oh man, you actually think there's a chance she's telling the truth? I hesitated. Not because I believed her, but because I knew if there was even a 1% chance this was real, I had to handle it carefully. I'm gonna ask for a paternity test, I said finally. Ryan let out a short laugh. Damn, she really went scorched earth with this one, huh? Yeah. All right, he said. And if she refuses? Then we'll really know what's up. I didn't text Sabrina back. I called her. The phone barely rang once before she picked up. Ethan? Her voice was soft, breathless, like she'd been sitting there, staring at her phone, waiting for me to break first. I kept my tone flat. If you're serious about this, I'll need a paternity test. Silence. A beat too long. Then, Ethan, how can you even say that? Her voice wavered, like I just slapped her. You think I'd lie about something like this? Yes, that's exactly what I thought. But I didn't say it. I just exhaled. Sabrina, if it's mine, we'll figure it out. But I'm not doing anything until I see proof. She sniffled. I can't believe you don't trust me. I didn't respond. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. Then, finally, fine, she muttered. We'll do the test. I closed my eyes. All right. Let me know when. I hung up before she could say anything else. Days passed. Sabrina didn't reach out, didn't text, didn't call. Not a single word. Ryan and I waited, but something told me we wouldn't be hearing from her again. And I was right. A week later, Emily, a girl who ran in the same social circles as Sabrina, sent me a text. Emily, hey, you probably don't care, but Sabrina's been telling people she's moving to Miami. I frowned. Me? Why? Emily. Apparently she met some older guy. Real estate developer. Loaded. Of course she did. I ran a hand down my face, shaking my head. Ryan's words echoed in my head from that night at his apartment. She was testing the waters, seeing if she could trade up. I guess she finally found someone. And just like that, the pregnancy magically disappeared. I never heard from Sabrina again. Not directly, at least. A few weeks later, I saw a post on social media. Sabrina in Miami, sipping some overpriced cocktail at a luxury rooftop bar, wearing a dress I knew she couldn't afford on her own. And beside her, some older guy, graying at the temples, dressed in a tailored suit. She looked happy. She looked secure. And for the first time since this whole mess started, I felt nothing. No anger. No bitterness. No regret. Just relief. Sabrina had spent so much time plotting, scheming, trying to secure her future. And in the end, she only played herself. Months passed. Life moved on. After everything that had happened, I thought maybe, just maybe, there'd be some lingering bitterness. Some nights where I lay awake, thinking about what could have been. But the truth? I didn't think about her at all. Cutting Sabrina out of my life had been like removing a weight I didn't even know I was carrying. The business was thriving. Ryan and I were finally running things our way. I reconnected with old friends, started traveling more, even picked up boxing again. Something I hadn't done since college. For the first time in years, I felt free. Then one night, Ryan and I were grabbing drinks at the Gold Room, a high-end lounge we used to go to before life got crazy. We were halfway through our second round when Ryan suddenly stiffened. His glass hit the table a little too hard. "Well, well," he muttered. "Look who it is." I followed his gaze across the dimly lit bar. And there she was. Sabrina. She wasn't alone. She was sitting across from Harrison Tate, a well-known real estate developer in Chicago. Older, connected, and ruthless as hell. I knew of him, had even dealt with him a few times. He was the kind of guy who'd charm you over a glass of whiskey, shake your hand, and then gut your entire business behind your back. Ryan exhaled through his nose. Damn, that's who she landed on. I shook my head. Doesn't surprise me. Harrison wasn't known for relationships. He was known for collecting people, keeping them around as long as they were useful, then tossing them aside when they weren't. And judging by the look on Sabrina's face, she was realizing that a little too late. She was trying to smile, trying to look engaged, but there was something off. Her posture was too rigid. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap. And Harrison? He wasn't even looking at her. He was scrolling through his phone, barely acknowledging she was there. I watched as she reached for her drink, her hand trembling slightly before she took a sip. Ryan leaned in. "You think she sees us?" I shrugged. "Not yet." But then, like she felt us watching, Sabrina suddenly looked up. Her eyes locked onto mine. For a split second, she froze. I saw it all flash across her face. Shock, panic, regret. Then she quickly composed herself, forcing a smile. But it was shaky, uncertain. I just stared at her. I didn't nod, didn't react. Just took a slow sip of my drink and looked away. Ryan smirked. "Damn, that probably stung." "Not my problem," I muttered. We went back to our conversation, but I could feel her eyes flicking toward me every few minutes, like she was waiting for me to come over. I didn't. Eventually, Harrison stood up, said something to her, and walked away, probably off to talk business with someone who actually mattered to him. Sabrina sat there alone, staring at her drink. Ryan nudged me. "She's coming over." I didn't even have to turn around to know he was right. A second later, a familiar voice spoke. "Ethan." I took my time setting my glass down before looking up at her. "Sabrina." She hesitated, like she wasn't sure how to approach this, like she wasn't sure who I was anymore. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice softer than I remembered. Ryan let out a quiet chuckle. "Oh, this should be good." I ignored him. I looked at Sabrina, really looked at her, and for the first time in a long time, I felt nothing. No anger, no resentment, just nothing. "You got 2 minutes," I said. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed. "Can we? Maybe somewhere private?" "Not happening," Ryan said before I could answer. She shot him a glare but turned back to me. Ethan, please. I leaned back in my chair, folding my arms. You have something to say? Say it. She glanced over her shoulder, probably checking to see if Harrison was watching, then exhaled. I wanted to say I'm sorry. Ryan scoffed. For what? You're gonna have to be more specific. Sabrina ignored him, focusing on me. I messed up, she admitted. I was scared, and I made the wrong choices. I raised an eyebrow. Which part are you sorry for? Trying to replace me with my brother? Lying about being pregnant? Or just the fact that it didn't work out the way you planned? She flinched, and for a moment, just a brief moment, I saw the mask slip. Her face twisted, not with sadness, not with remorse, but with something closer to frustration. Because she had expected me to be softer, expected me to be the guy she could manipulate again. But I wasn't that guy anymore. I had nothing left to give her. She exhaled sharply, shaking her head. You don't have to believe me, but I really did love you. I tilted my head. You loved the lifestyle, the access, the security. But me? I let out a small, humorless laugh. You just tolerated me until something better came along. Her mouth opened, but she didn't have anything to say to that, because we both knew it was true. And honestly, that was all I needed. I grabbed my drink, took one last sip, and stood up. We're done here, Sabrina. Her eyes widened slightly. Ethan, wait. I didn't. I walked right past her without looking back. Ryan followed, chuckling under his breath. Damn, that was brutal. I shrugged. Not my problem. And just like that, I closed the door on Sabrina one last time. A few weeks passed after that night at the bar. Sabrina never tried to contact me again. No texts, no calls, no last-ditch efforts to pull me back in. And honestly, I thought that was the end of it. But then, one afternoon, Ryan strolled into my office, tossed his phone onto my desk, and grinned. You're gonna want to see this. I glanced down. It was a forum post, one of those anonymous relationship confession threads where people aired out their dirty laundry. And the title? I think I lost the best thing that ever happened to me, and I don't know how to fix it. I skimmed the first few lines, my pulse kicking up slightly. A few months ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I had an amazing fiancé, successful, kind, generous. A man who gave me everything. But I let my own fears and greed get the best of me. I started worrying about our future, about financial security, and instead of trusting him, I tried to hedge my bets. I thought I was being smart, protecting myself, but in the process, I lost him. I let out a slow breath. This isn't. Ryan smirked. Keep reading. I crossed a line that I can never take back. I don't even recognize the person I became. And now? He's moved on. He doesn't even look at me the same way. And I have to live with the fact that I destroyed something real for something that was never worth it. I sat back in my chair, exhaling through my nose. Ryan folded his arms. I mean, it could be anyone, right? I rolled my eyes. Right. We both knew it was her. And you know what? I didn't feel satisfaction reading it. Not really. Maybe a little, in the way you feel when you see karma do its thing. But mostly, it just confirmed what I already knew. Sabrina knew she'd lost, and she had no one to blame but herself. Ryan stretched, standing up. Well, I think that's the final nail in the coffin. You officially live rent-free in her head, bro. I snorted. Not my problem. And I meant it. I had already moved on. Life after Sabrina felt lighter. The business was thriving. Ryan and I were running things exactly the way we wanted. I had reconnected with old friends, started traveling more, even picked up boxing again, something I hadn't done since college. For the first time in years, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Sabrina was a closed chapter, one I had no intention of reopening. A few months later, I heard she finally left Chicago, packed up, and moved to Miami permanently. Last I checked, she wasn't with Harrison anymore. Guess he chewed her up and spit her out like I knew he would. But that wasn't my problem either, because I knew one thing for sure. While she was out there looking for another meal ticket, I was finally living my life on my own terms. And damn, it felt good.